Good afternoon and welcome to the Chatham Select Board March 30th, 2021 meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify me. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted via remote participation. Excuse me. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1508-945-4410, conference ID 134-208-476#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. For efficiency, while you're using this remote format, please mute your audio until which time you're called on. And at that time, you can use the Teams app to raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, you can speak out to me and I will recognize you at the appropriate time. Equally important, please disable your video until the appropriate time to present or comment. And because we are conducting a business meeting, just remember that we're trying to conduct proper forum. Roll call, let's see, we'll start the roll call to establish that we have a quorum. And I'll start off with Board Member Colas.
Present.
Board Member Nicastro.
Present.
Board Member Dykins.
Present.
Board Member Metters.
Present.
And the chair is present. So we do have a quorum. So right now I'm going to ask if I have a motion to approve the March 23rd, 2021 meeting minutes. Dean?
Oh, so moved.
Second?
Second, Peter.
Okay. Again, if there's any typos that you wish to send along to Shauna, please do so. Are there any substantive edits that we need to address? And Dean has his hand up, so I'll start with Dean.
Yeah, Madam Chair, a couple. These are quasi-substantive. On page 9, in the fourth paragraph, there's a motion, but we don't indicate who made it. I'm not sure who did.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Does anybody call? Okay.
It might have been me. I don't know.
I think you were moving down. You know what, Dean? I think you're right. You were sort of moving down the.
Okay. And the other edit on that page in that motion where it says 19 plus or minus, I think the word acres, and the same true with the motion. The next motion says 19 plus or minus. And then finally on page 11, this is more substantive. Under the home rule petition, paragraph 5, Roman number 5, says Community Development Director Katie Donovan said the board voted for it, but that's not quite accurate because we had taken a vote at that point. I would just say that Katie Donovan said board members had expressed support for petitioning the state legislature. Okay. I'll repeat that. Katie Donovan said board members had expressed support for petitioning the state legislature.
Okay. All right. Any other changes?
No.
Okay. So we'll take a vote with those changes for the March 23rd, 2021 meeting minutes. Peter?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Okay. All right. Public announcements are next, and agenda item requests. I just want to note one thing that's of a little bit concerned, and I think Corey has his hand up, so it may be the same thing. On March, last Friday, Corey, Jill, the harbor master, myself, and the CDR Hagen from Sector Southeast New England, and another sector commander whose name eludes me right now, met with us to discuss the Station Chatham's boats and future boat options. Commander Hagan announced that the Coast Guard has decided to go with two 45-foot response boats to replace the 342 near-shore lifeboats. The Coast Guard will not have surf-capable vessels assigned to Chatham anymore. The 45s are restricted from operating and breaking surf, seas in excess of 8 feet, and winds in excess of 30 knots. So we have gone from a surf station to a heavy weather station, and now to a standard multi-mission station in just under 2 years. Well, now we have no trained personnel or resources required for our maritime area. So the board, we need to, we're going to be sending a letter of thanks and expressing our concerns to about the meeting. Corey and I had been on an email exchange this morning to go over that letter. The board needs to address this action sooner or later. We need to, we'll be probably meeting with the harbor master and the town manager to sort of go over some thoughts and have some recommendations on this. But this is a serious matter for Chatham, and we're a very unusual area, and we weren't buying the justification as to why these changes have come to our port. Okay, all right. So saying all that, any other board members? Corey and then Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you for bringing that one up. I know Friday's meeting was, it was a good meeting, but it was a concerning meeting. So I look forward to some further dialogue. There's two other things I'd like to bring up right now. One, I want to do a spotlight on the Cultural Council. I know right now we are reaching out to serving members on our various boards and committees to see if they're going to look to continue serving when their terms expire in June. And I talked with the chair of the Cultural Council the other day, and we're in a situation where, based on a recent resignation within this year, and some of the members not seeking to re-upping in June, the Cultural Council may be faced with a vast shortage of members to even operate. So I would encourage people who would want to consider serving on the Cultural Council. There's a couple months left before the terms, the current members' terms are up, but there will be openings for sure. Please consider serving. The membership is going to be direly needed, and it's a great cause. It's a great function for our community, and I highly encourage people to consider stepping forward to serve on our Cultural Council. The second item, I just want to follow up. I made a request, I know last week, concerning West Chatham, and at the time, we did not have a response from MassDOT, but we now do have a response that was dated March 25th from Mary Jo Perry, the District Highway Director, in response to Tom Temple's letter dated February 25th. So I think maybe it'd be appropriate for the the board to have a little discussion on that, to brief the public on the contents of that letter might be appropriate in the near future. So thank you.
Great. I just want to note, anybody interested in the cultural arts of the Cape, that sector of our community has taken a huge hit, and they need all the support they can get. And so talented folks on that committee would be well welcomed. Okay, Dean?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to bring up something that's Board Member Dykens and I have brought up in the past, and see if we can get an update. This has to do with a prospect for paid parking, the major parking lots downtown. I know that there's a longer term review that needs to be undertaken in terms of the technology for it, but I'm wondering if there is some possibility of having valet parking instituted for the upcoming summer season. All indications are that, especially with the vaccinations proceeding, that we're going to have a fairly significant influx of visitors this summer. And this may be an opportunity not only to help regulate the parking downtown, the parking situation, but also to bring in some additional income. So wonder if we could get an update from the town staff at some point in the near future whether this would be feasible. That's my request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other from the board? Okay, any announcements from the staff? Any announcements from the remote participants? Jill, your hand is up. Go ahead, Jill.
Thank you. A lot of buttons to click here. So thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to take this opportunity to recognize one of our employees who's retiring, Mary Fougere, who's our secretary to the Conservation Division, is retiring after 21 years of service. So I have a plaque. I won't cover my face for too long so you can hear me. This is the plaque, and it reads from the town of Chatham. It's a certificate of appreciation to Mary M. Fougere for 21 years service to the citizens of Chatham. Congratulations on your retirement for April 1st, 2021. And it's signed by myself and Chairman Davis. So please congratulate Mary. Paul, her husband, had retired last year. So this is a pretty exciting time for them and their public service career, but bittersweet for us with the loss of a longtime employee.
That's great. Thank you, Jill, very much. We also have Elaine Gibbs on, who has a public announcement as well.
Actually, the two agenda requests. One was on the West Chatham corridor and the letter from Mass DOT. I have not received, I did not see that response from Mary Jo Perry. I was wondering if we can expand that a little bit to beyond the letter. There were a couple things that were not included in the letter, and one was the blind spot coming from Barn Hill Road into the Barn Hill roundabout. I had brought that up with Mass DOT, and the only response was they didn't want to pay to buy Dunkin' Donuts. They recognized it was a blind spot, and it's continuing to happen. And I think the hillsides aren't helping. I think the only thing that we can do is put a stop sign there before they accelerate out into the roundabout. And I think that's a Mass DOT call. So I'd like that question answered. And then the second one was on the stamped concrete that they're going to add around the George Ryder roundabout in the current roadway. And it's going to narrow the passenger lane significantly. And all they have to do is not do it. And so it's no work for them to just not do it. And thirdly, over the last week, I'm sure you've all noticed that the north sidewalk, the lane, the multi-purpose path is being dug up. And so far I've counted, they have put in 40 manholes in the sidewalk. And I don't think that was in the original plans. That's supposed to be a multi-purpose path. And I don't know what is precipitating that. It's not only is it going to be aesthetically terrible to have a sidewalk full of manhole covers, but it's going to be hard for pedestrians and strollers and cyclists and runners. So maybe they could address that, or Tom Temple can. And my second agenda request is at the last meeting regarding affordable housing, when I asked how the preference would be given to people with ties to Chatham, Attorney Costello said that the state would require detailed studies of town demographics and need to determine the level of local preference. I don't know why that wasn't one of the first things we did before we just designated Middle Road and approved the purchase of Main Street and Jordan's Trail. So I would ask that there be an agenda item to consider having that study and analysis go forward now, so that by the time of town meeting, we have a better sense of how many people in Chatham and the demographics need the housing. I think it would also help the community engagement consultant that we're going to bring on board to talk about those housing needs. So I would hope those two things are considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other folks wishing to make an agenda item request or public announcement? Okay. All right. So tonight's meeting, I just wanted to do a little review on. Our new business will be a couple of COVID updates, 3 to be exact, one from Dr. Bob and one from Jill, and then one from our Chamber of Commerce, which is a quarterly update. And then we're going to accept public comments on our business agenda, which is consider extension of commercial 2020-2021 shellfish permits, the 90 Bridge Street project and the Coast Guard Boathouse donation update, Also, we'll be discussing town meeting articles and reviewing them and potentially voting and placing them on the warrant and recommending and our recommendations. And these are all related to the water department, water capital, the Monomoy Regional School District's budget, and OPEB benefits. And then after that, we will have, once those public comments are done, we'll go into a consent agenda item for a vote, and then we'll go into our business agenda, and then the executive session. We will have one at the end of the meeting, and we will not be returning to a regular meeting. Okay, so let's start off with the coronavirus update from Dr. Duncanson, our Director of Natural Resources. Dr. Bob.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Chair. So for tonight's COVID-19 update, I have a couple of things and a couple of graphs to show you as we frequently do. Right now in the U.S., and I'm just kind of touching on the big picture number because we haven't touched on that in a while. But as of this afternoon, the U.S. has over 30.7 million cases of COVID-19. The next nearest country to the U.S. is Brazil at about 12.5 million. So a significant difference between the United States and the second highest country. In the U.S., we currently have over 550,000 deaths, and the next closest country to us is Brazil. In Barnstable County, as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, we had 12,046 cases, and that was an increase of 73 cases from the prior day. The numbers of new cases on a daily basis on the Cape have stabilized a little bit. The last 3 days, we've had 73, 82, and 85 cases respectively, which is down from the prior 3 or 4 days when we were up around 120 cases per day on average. We currently have 443 deaths on the Cape, and that's an increase of 1 death since the previous day. In Chatham, we are currently at 299 cases since the pandemic began, and we are at 28 deaths since the pandemic began. In March of this year so far, we have 36 cases. So unfortunately, we have seen a slight upsurge in cases both in Chatham as well as on the Cape. In the last week since the board's meeting last Tuesday, we've seen an increase in 14 cases in Chatham, which is the highest 1 week total we have seen in quite a while. So if you let me share my screen. This is what our current monthly graph looks like. And you can see that March is quickly catching up to February when we were on the downslope of the increase that we'd seen post-holiday period. So unfortunately, we did not, continue the downward trajectory, but similar to what we're seeing in Massachusetts, New England, and across the country, we're basically seeing a leveling off of cases. And so considering we only have one more day to go in March, obviously we're gonna kind of flatten that curve, if you will, and not continue the downward trajectory as we were hoping for earlier this spring. In terms of the age distribution of cases, and I'm now showing the age graph, we've seen that kind of flatten out over the last couple of weeks, or, with the younger demographics catching up, as you remember last spring and through the summer when the pandemic began, and even into the post-holiday period surge, a lot of cases on the Cape and in other places were related to folks in the older demographics. We are now seeing the younger demographics. And in fact, of the 14 cases we've had in the last week, 11 of those cases were in less than 39-year-olds. We had 4 folks in the 30 to 39-year-olds, 3 in the 20 to 29-year-olds. We also had 3 in the 10 to 19-year-olds. We are seeing a number of cases related to school-age children, which, as you've probably heard, is having an impact on schools across the Cape as well. So unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but, right now the younger demographic folks are not eligible for the vaccine. So that's why, one of the reasons why we're seeing more cases in that younger demographic. Hopefully that will change in the upcoming weeks as the vaccine is rolled out to basically all age groups starting later in April. Our average daily incident rate in Chatham, which, had peaked right after the post-holiday surge and then dropped substantially, and then we saw a little bit of a peak at the beginning of March, is now showing a downward trend. However, keep in mind this data only comes out once a week, so this is last week's data that I'm showing. And based on the numbers that we've seen in the last week or so, I fully expect that our average daily positivity rate will show an increase once again. Right now, the statewide average 7-day average positivity rate is at 2.55%, which is up considering it was less than 2% for prior weeks. Chatham is averaging around 3.7%. So we still have been about twice what the statewide average has been, although that gap is narrowing here a little bit. And just to put it in perspective, other towns in the Cape, such as Barnstable is over 10%, and Yarmouth is around 7.7%. In the last week's weekly public health report that came out, a majority of the towns west of Chatham are in the red zone, as close as Brewster and Harwich. And then once you get to Chatham and Orleans, which both communities are in the green zone, and you head out towards Provincetown, most of the communities there are either in the green or the gray zone, which are the lowest rates. But everything to our west has been elevated and reflects that surge that we've been seeing in Barnstable, centered in Barnstable and Yarmouth for the last week to 10 days. And then just finally, a quick update on where we stand in the community in terms of vaccinations. And let me get this so you can kind of see the whole graph. The bottom graph is the graph as of last week, and then the top graph is this week's graph, or came out last week. So it's as of March 23rd. So this is a little bit outdated, but you can see in the 75 and older demographic, we are about 98% of the people in those demographic have been vaccinated, either fully or partially, which, makes sense because that's the group that's had access to the vaccine the longest. We've also seen an increase now in the 65 to 74-year-olds because, again, they are now eligible to get the vaccine. And we're seeing an uptick in the 50 to 64-year-olds as well. Because again, the vaccine eligibility opened up to 60 years and older starting this past Monday. So a lot of them are getting their vaccines. Not a whole lot of change in the 30 to 49-year-old group, but we are now seeing some of the younger folks in the 20 to 29-year-olds getting vaccinated because, they probably work in the food service industry or some of the other eligible groups that opened up as of the past Monday. So a couple other things that I just wanted to pass that came out of some of our calls today with either the county or the Department of Public Health. Barnstable County did receive an uptick in the amount of vaccine that they received for next week. Next week, they will have 4,100 doses available. If you remember, last week we announced they were getting about 3,500 doses for this week. Next week's allotment is about 4,100. We don't know if that is a sign of things to come moving forward or basically was just a one-time allotment or not. So we won't know exactly how that's going to pan out till next week. But just so folks can begin to plan a little bit, right now the county is planning three more clinics for next week. There will be 2 clinics at 4 Cs and 1 clinic at the fairgrounds. So just like this week, they announced 3 clinics. There will be 3 next week as well. Probably 4 Cs on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then the fairgrounds on Thursday. The definitive information on that will be coming out again, usually on Thursday of each week. with the clinics opening for registrations on Friday. And in the following week, the week of the 15th, again, the county is planning on having 2 clinics at 4 Cs and then probably a clinic at the Orleans DPW. They're trying to spread those clinics around the Cape, but there'll be more details on that coming as we get a little bit closer. The State Department of Public Health announced today that they're expecting to get 40,000 doses of the J&J single dose vaccine, and hopefully that will continue as we move forward. They are targeting that primarily towards the homebound because it's just so much easier for the homebound, as we talked about last week. Chatham has already vaccinated 24 people that are considered homebound. We have now got a second list going of additional people that have called in and indicated to us that they meet the criteria. So we are working on that again with our fire department as well as Outer Cape Health Services. We had hoped that that vaccination for that second group of homebounds might take place next week, but more than likely it's now going to take place the following week, just because of the time to get the vaccine in and distributed by Outer Cape Health Services. A couple other things that I just wanted to touch on real quickly. DPH did indicate that right now, at the federal level, they are really targeting a significant expansion of vaccine availability at pharmacies. Right now, there's about 17,000 pharmacies that have vaccine availability across the nation. The federal goal over the next 3 weeks is to increase that to 40,000 pharmacies, because that's part of the president's plan that people should be able to get to vaccinations within 5 miles of where they reside. And obviously, the only way that's really going to happen is to roll it out to the pharmacies. And just so people understand, the allotments that are going to the pharmacies in Massachusetts, that is separate from what the state gets. So the fact that we're rolling out more vaccine to the pharmacies does not impact the allocation that the state gets, because the pharmacies are working under a direct federal to pharmacy program. So that's good news. And any other thing I just wanted to touch on real quickly is the state allocation, which provides vaccine to the various state mass vaccination sites, as well as the county program, as well as health centers. That is the allocation in Massachusetts is receiving has been relatively flat. We're given indications that the feds were going to increase the amount of vaccine coming to the state, but so far that has not occurred. It may occur starting in April, but while the federal allocation to the pharmacies has increased substantially, the federal allocation to the various state allocations has not increased commensurate with that. And then I just wanted to touch on one last thing, and this is really just a reminder for folks. As more and more people get vaccinated and meet that criteria for being, quote, fully vaccinated, so 2 weeks have passed since your second dose of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, or 2 weeks have passed since the single dose of the J&J vaccine, it's really important for people to realize that just because you're, quote, fully vaccinated, you still need to practice wearing a mask, you still need to practice social distancing, and you still need to practice proper hand hygiene, because it's still, the jury is still out somewhat on whether or not, just because you've had the vaccine, you could still be a carrier of the COVID-19 virus, and you could still transmit it to others. So it's really important for people not to think, oh, I've been vaccinated, I don't need to wear a mask, and I can just go out and do anything I want. That's not the case. Not until the country gets much further along in pretty much everybody, or at least 80% or better of the population being vaccinated. So with that, that's all I have for tonight, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Bob. I was on my call this morning too with the COVID task force, and here the county. The feedback is okay. The county was talking about the third wave, and the question came up about the old, if you had COVID before, whether you're susceptible to the variants and could get COVID again. And the answer was yes. So I think people really have to remember to stay vigilant, also to get their vaccine. It's really a concern because, you know, if we're in this third wave for a while and it is the Easter and Passover season, it's just sort of people are gathering again. And,
Right.
you know, and the state's been opened up a little bit more, and, you know, we're seeing this uptick. So I just really, we really need to just drive it home that everybody needs to continue the safety procedures. That was all I had to say. I didn't have a question.
Yeah,
Dean?
the vaccines are, well, I was just going to say, the vaccines are very important. They are protective. They do not prevent you from getting COVID-19, but the important thing they do is they reduce the severity of the disease, they cut down on the number of hospitalizations, and they cut down on the number of deaths. So it's critical to get the disease, to get the vaccine, but don't think that just because you get the vaccine, you may not get COVID. You may still get it, but hopefully it's not severe and not something that's going to knock people out. And it's not different. You know, the same thing happens with the flu vaccine. Flu vaccine is not 100% effective at keeping you from getting the flu, but generally, if you have been vaccinated and you do get it, it's a much, much milder case of it.
Okay, thanks. Dean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bob, two questions with respect to the increased number of pharmacies that the government is going to employ. Do we know which vaccines they are going to be administering? My understanding, for example, is that CVS has all three at the present, but is there any indication as to what's coming?
No, a lot of the pharmacies do have the Pfizer vaccine. I do know that, like you, CVS has all three available. They have been getting a fair amount of the J&J vaccine, but there are certain criteria that people, you know, need to kind of meet in order to get the J&J. Similar to, you know, targeting homebound folks and things like that. It just makes it that much easier. But, you know, most of the pharmacies have the Pfizer available. And or the Moderna.
And the other question has to do with Cape Cod Healthcare. You mentioned that Barnstable County is going to be conducting several clinics at Cape Cod Community College, and I know that Cape Cod Healthcare has simultaneously conducted a clinic with Barnstable at the gymnasium there. Is there any word on whether or when Cape Cod Healthcare is going to be scheduling clinics? Are they going to be doing the same thing as they did a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, Cape Cod Healthcare continues to get vaccine. Basically, they are rolling it out to their patients. So when they get a vaccine allocation, they are contacting people that are already in their system to set up appointments for them. So they will be continuing at Cape Cod Community College as well. The latest word I got this afternoon was that the county is going to be using 4Cs on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then Cape Cod Healthcare will be using it on other days during the week.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Jeff?
Yeah, just a couple comments. I give a great report, Dr. Bob. And I just wanted to call out Jill and the team and everybody involved in getting vaccinations to the homebound, including Outer Cape Health. They've really kind of focused on it. They've done a really nice job. So, yeah, we got some good press. So I think, you know, it's attaboy, attagirl to everybody on the team. That's, you know, in Chatham taking care of our people. And it's actually good to see the vaccines being rolled out the way they are. 100 million vaccines in 100 days. I thought it was a joke, kind of a pipe dream, and actually it's going to happen. And that's not taking anything away from Operation Warp Speed that produced the vaccines, because that was incredible too. So I think all in all, even though it's been, you know, a horrific chapter, we're getting there. We're getting there. Comment.
Yeah, and let me just say, in addition to the effort that went into getting the homebound folks done, yesterday, our fire department teamed up and they provided vaccinations to folks at the Chatham Housing Authority and the congregate living facility there. So no, they've been great to work with. We've been working with the fire department, police department, our health folks, as well as Outer Cape Health to make that happen, to bring the vaccines directly to people, that may not have the ability to get to a vaccination site somewhere else.
Yeah,
It's
super.
been a real team effort. That and the Council on Aging, they've been taking the bulk of the phone calls and calling people back and shepherding paperwork around and making it happen. So that's been really great.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's our Council on Aging being a great network and the middle of the wheel for a lot of things. Also, I want to just also applaud the 5 firefighters that trained to give out vaccinations for EMT firefighters. I think that was a call beyond it was great. Anyway,
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Unless there's any questions, I have to ask the public if there's any questions for Dr. Duncanson. Okay, I don't see any. So we're going to move over to Jill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't actually have anything to report, but we have Alex, our Finance Director, to talk about, to provide her quarterly report to talk about revenues and potential funding available. So Alex.
And I did miss that. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, just some of the numbers, expenditures and revenues that we've had since the pandemic started. To date, through March, we spent over $903,244.83 on COVID-related costs, and those are the items that we expect to receive at least some reimbursement from, either through the CARES Act or from FEMA. To date, from the CARES Act, we have received $298,851.58. We do have a little bit remaining under CARES in what's called the reconciliation period. So we'll have more on that. We just submitted the most recent request for reimbursement from CARES on March 5th, as was required. So that was another 200,000+ that we're looking for from them. And then FEMA, we're estimating, over $675,000 in costs for which is 75% of the costs that we've expended. The good news is with the new American Rescue Plan Aid estimate, Chatham will be receiving additional funds, and the amount of those funds, I have this somewhere. And I printed this out, and where is it now? Just bear with me. Well, Chatham will be getting direct funding as well as Barnstable County. Barnstable County will be getting $41,307,281, which is separate from what the town will receive itself. And I'm just looking for our amount on that because we'll be getting an additional $500,000. And we will be getting, hold on just one moment, I'm pulling it up. Chatham will be getting direct assistance of $590,157. So that's in addition to what will be distributed through the county. And that's available through the end of the calendar year 2024. We haven't received all the guidelines for what that can be used for, but some of it will be eligible costs are responding to the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts, pay for workers, possible replacing revenue reductions, and then necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And those are just some of the highlights. We're still waiting for guidance from the Mass Municipal Association for what eligible uses are. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that before I go into our local estimated receipts on where our local revenues are due to the pandemic.
Okay. Any questions for Alex? Why don't you proceed and then we'll.
Okay. Well, we, again, monitoring our local estimated receipts to see how Chatham's doing compared to, now with the pandemic. And as you recall, we did lower our local estimated receipts for FY 2021. We just did receive the third quarter, the amounts for the third quarter receipts, which are coming in tomorrow. And interesting to note that meals tax for the 3 quarters compared to last year is down almost 120,000. So that is a direct response to the pandemic. Hotel motel, again, with the short-term rentals, that has really increased the amount that we've received. So far for hotel motel, including short-term rentals, we've received $2.2 million. However, it looks like traditional lodging is about 684,000 less than it was last year. So, and other than that, our local estimated receipts, because we did lower them so much, we have actually made our local estimated receipts for the current fiscal year. So we're not in danger of having a revenue deficit.
Great. Okay. That's good to hear. Any questions for Alex? Nothing. Jeff, you're okay. Good job. All right. So I'm hearing that from the chamber, Cape Cod Chamber, who's been hearing from some of the larger hotelers and whatnot, that there is an unprecedented demand for leisure travel to Cape Cod this year. So chances are we're going to see quite a few people in town and probably an increase to what those numbers appeared to be from last year on our revenues. Anyway, any questions from the public for Alex? All right, Alex, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good job. Thanks. All right. And so we have our next COVID update, and this is part of our board's goals and objectives, is to have a quarterly update from the Chamber of Commerce. And so we put it under the COVID-19 update because we had asked Mary to sort of reach out to the community and find out just give us some information about how people were feeling about going forward in the into the summer. And so we're going to welcome Mary from the Chamber of Commerce. Mary Kavanaugh, I'm sorry. Mary, are you on?
I am, Shireen. Thank you very much. Also on the call to speak a little bit later is Susan Dim, who is the president of our Merchants Association. And also wanted to mention that Gary Thulander from Chatham Bars Inn is on the call as well. Gary is the board chair for the Chamber of Commerce. So I have been speaking with members in regards to how the first quarter has been for them. And pretty much the consistent answer was, that it's been good. Especially, weekends have been strong. There have been some challenges for them, though. It's been really tough with the lack of restaurants and coffee shops, not being as readily available. They also mentioned, too, the amount of public bathrooms that have been available. I know the bathrooms at the town hall have been available for folks visiting town. And Jill and I, as well as Dan Tobin, have had this conversation. And I know that, some things, they're working on some things, but just wanted to mention again that if there could be anything done, to increase the amount of bathrooms, especially even if it's just on the weekends, that would be great. Because there is definitely a lot more traffic than usual this time of year. So if there could be, at least one more bathroom location, that would be great. As you mentioned, Shireen, the Cape Cod Chamber is predicting, a heavy demand for visitation of Chatham this summer. That's also been confirmed by our local realtors. Their bookings are definitely up already for the summer. And then hotel bookings as well are strong for the summer. And some businesses too are hearing rumblings of people planning for weddings in the fall as well. There seems to be a great continued desire for outdoor dining and shopping options. And, the town was great last year in their support for businesses to be able to execute that. So just if we could have that, continued support from the town in those areas, I think that would be great. Staffing, continues to be a challenge. But that came up. The other thing that has come up with members is, everyone's wondering what regulations are going to look like, from the state and from the town. They feel that, we learned a lot of good lessons last year, but they also want to be able to increase foot traffic, but safely. So, regulations, they're going to leave them up to the state and the town. But, businesses need to be able to rebound from last year. So the chamber will be doing whatever we can to support our businesses in that effort. The other thing I wanted to mention is I know Jill and Shireen and I have talked about the possibility of a community forum with the Board of Health as well. And I have mentioned that to a few members just in passing, that this is a possibility, and people were definitely in favor of something like that. So wanted to let you know that. And just to give you an idea of what we've been doing at the chamber for our members and for the town. Again, just continued to increase social media marketing via Facebook and Instagram. I have all the numbers in just the last couple months of what we've done, but I don't, if anyone wants those numbers, I'm happy to share them with you. And just an update, we've kind of streamlined our social media and marketing. So now, in the past, there was a merchants Facebook page, the Chatham MA page, and there was the chamber Facebook page. So in an effort to streamline everything, we've combined those two pages. And then there also were 2 Instagram accounts. And again, we've combined those as well. Emails out to members regarding, regulations, grants that might be available, any information that might be helpful to the members. Since December, when we last met, we've put out 44 emails to the members. We've also shared on our website, on our news page, 121 news items, and 99 of those were relating to the town. So just different things that have come out from the town, we've posted on the news page, which then gets pushed out onto Facebook as well. So just wanted to let you know that we've been doing that consistently. And then, as I mentioned in December, on all of our emails, there's always a link. It's called All Things Chatham. And that links back to the town website. So people have access to that as well. Let's see here, what else? And the constant contact email goes to there's also the link to the coronavirus page on the town website. And another thing that we've done since we last spoke is Shireen had mentioned to me about a conversation that occurred through the regional task force about just trying to learn what businesses were looking for for the upcoming season. So what we did was we just created a survey and put that out to our members, which I then, shared with Shireen and Jill. And it was interesting. We had 14 members respond. Of those, 4 were retail businesses, 4 were hospitality, 2 were service, and 2 were restaurants, and 1 was one of our museums. So that was interesting. And again, I'm happy to share that information for anyone who would like that. Our membership has remained consistent. We're always trying to get new members to join, but our membership levels have remained consistent throughout the year. We've rolled out some additional advertising opportunities for members where they can advertise on our website. We've also, the chamber and the merchants are working together. We've created 4 new working committees, and it consists of board members from both the chamber and the merchants. One is a marketing social media committee. Then we also have a membership committee, a beautification committee, and long range planning committee. And some of the projects, one was the streamlining of the social media pages. We're working on creating some weekly spotlight videos for our members, working on ribbon cutting ceremonies for any new businesses, and some beautification projects for open spaces. And let's see, what else? Our guidebook creation of that is underway. So that should come out by Memorial Day, hopefully more towards the middle of May. And we'll probably have about 50,000 copies produced, and those will be, of course, given to all of our members. They'll be at the visitor centers in town, and Route 6, Route 3, and then there's also a digital version that's on our website. I don't know if you all noticed, but we did a press release announcing the board members of both boards, the chamber and the merchants. That was in the Chronicle January timeframe. And basically we're just continuing to, try and work with the town and partner with the town, in any way we can, and just trying to do our best to be there for our businesses and our residents. So that's what I have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. I think it's really important to maintain the level of communication. These quarterly reports are helpful, and then your continued work with the town manager on an ongoing basis is it creates a better understanding of what's going on with the town. The governor mandates on the COVID stuff it's a mystery to all of us what decisions he's going to make at any given time. He holds everything very tight to his chest. So I understand that businesses need predictability, obviously, for long range planning and for sustainability. And so it makes it a little harder, but we're very supportive of our local businesses. Just a question. Do you have you experienced, or do you know of, and you don't have to name any names of anything, but any business closings or new businesses opening, and is that balance still, equal, or are we seeing anybody losing out to the COVID pandemic?
So we do have some new businesses opening within the coming months. We, do have some businesses that are closing. I don't think I can say that it's definitely just because of COVID. I think there were other, factors that led to that. So, I think it's pretty even. So, Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think there are, a lot of people that are really in danger of, closing doors just because of COVID.
Great. All right. That's good to hear. We can either ask questions of Mary, continue to ask questions, or hear from Susan Dim and possibly Gary Thulander, and then ask more questions. It's up to the board if you have any questions for Mary now, or you want to just hold off until we hear from Susan. All right, well, why don't we move forward? Thank you very much, Mary. Susan Dim is the president of the Chatham Merchants Association. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you. We're just plodding along. We continue to meet twice a month, as we always have. During the height of the pandemic, we actually were meeting weekly. And we have Board of Selectmen who come to our meetings. We have town employees who come to our meeting, town managers. Our meetings are open to anyone who wants to attend. And they are now the first and third Thursday of the month at 9 o'clock on Zoom. And anyone can come, or, they're posted on our constant contact. And I think that those have been really beneficial. Our first event coming up is obviously the Easter egg hunt, which is this weekend. It's not our traditional Easter egg hunt, unfortunately, but it is more than we had last year. So we've teamed up with the rec center and the chamber, and the bunny will be at the rec center handing out bags of Easter eggs. So people will stay in their car. I suspect it will move pretty smoothly, and I hope we don't have crowds like we normally have. The Easter egg hunt is one of the more heavily attended events that we do, to the fact that we don't even advertise it, because it's just gotten too insane. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that people get wind of the fact that it's Candyman or chocolates. So this year that's not happening. So it should hopefully be a much more manageable event. We're already geared up for Art in the Park. We're doing whales again this year. The whales are already ready to go. The dates will be mid-June to mid-August. And then, of course, they'll be auctioned off in August. Along with that is the oars in the stores scavenger hunt. The oars have already been distributed, and that's already up to go. You have to be a member of the Merchants Association to do that. This year, there is no charge for either the whales or the oars again, like we did last year, just because we know businesses are having such a rough time. Mondays on Main will be hopefully rolled out July 5th, and then we'll continue through August 30th. The beauty of Mondays on Main is that it is completely flexible. We can switch it to different nights. We can continue it into the fall. We can have it for Christmas. So depending on what our numbers are, it would be a great way to sort of help boost retail business, to help kind of capture some of the money that was lost last year. And I want to thank Cape Cod 5 for being our sponsor for that. The Pumpkin People in the Park, we hope will go on as normal, October 15th to the 30th. We also have Oktoberfest scheduled for October 23rd. And we have Christmas Stroll December 10th and 11th. So hopefully things can proceed as they have in the past. But it's all, of course, COVID numbers driven. So, we have to be flexible and adapt to that.
Thank you. So we will expect to see you guys at some point. I imagine you want to be sooner than later on the Art in the Park and the Mondays on Main.
Yeah.
As I said, we probably were going to have a Board of Health joint meeting. So we've got a number of things to discuss. More than likely should be sooner than later, so
Right.
that you can make your plans. Dean has a question for you, Susan. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Susan, and thank you, Mary. Susan, are the merchants, are your associations comfortable with the parking arrangements that were put in place last summer? I know we modified them somewhat at the end of the season. They seem to have worked. I just wondered if anybody's looking for some revisions to that.
Yeah, I think that they worked amazingly well last year. Again, depending on our numbers, I think that we could maybe do away with a few of them. you know, we can, it's flexible enough that we can do it short-term basis. You know, it depends on how we do. I mean, I see sort of leaving the one in front of Bluefin's because obviously they're doing a tremendous amount of takeout. And I don't know how much the other restaurants are doing takeout anymore. We're no longer doing as much curbside business, so we don't have to have it, you know, for every section of town. So I think we could, you know, do away with those. But I know that Mary and I are meeting with Kathleen later this week, and I think we'll go over some of those things. So yeah, we'll again adapt.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Susan or Mary at this time? We want to hear from Gary. Are you prepared to, you want to say something? Gary Thulander is the president of the Chamber of Commerce as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You can hear me okay?
Yes, Ken.
Right. Well, first of all, don't want to extend the meeting here. So I think Susan and Mary really articulated what the message from the merchants and chamber are, but very excited about this coming year. Obviously, tough year to get through from a business standpoint for most businesses through the COVID situation. But just to comment on the hospitality sector, I'm also on the Cape Cod Chamber also, so I keep abreast of what's going on. But and also I have a little focus group for GMs in hospitality on the Cape here, but also Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket. And what you said earlier is actually very much confirmed. Almost all the hotels are seeing uptick in call volume in the short term, but also long term. So everyone's very optimistic about this summer. There's been a tremendous amount of pent up demand, obviously, with people not traveling as much, and still people not traveling to Europe or outside the United States as much. But as vaccines build here and continue and more of the population is vaccinated, more people are definitely feeling more comfortable in traveling. And that'll be good news, I think, for our businesses and our town. But at the same time, making sure we have a safe environment for our employees, our residents, and the visitors that come to our destination. But leisure business is going to be extremely strong. Group and wedding, obviously, in the immediate short term, a lot of those things were moved off to in the fall. But just speaking for Chatham Bars Inn, you know, we had actually a record first quarter this winter with visitation compared to past years, and our pace numbers are almost historical coming up for 2021. So again, should be a really good rebound, we hope, for this coming year for everybody.
Thank you, Gary. So how are the help situation? You know.
Good question. I have some, updates. We do have, obviously we try to hire local first, and we get a lot of applications in that regard. We H-2Bs, we have been successful. A lot of business has been successful in getting those visas. So the H-2Bs will be coming in. Some just arrived just a couple days ago. We will be waiting on the J-1s to actually tomorrow is a really important date. That's when former President Trump's declaration of travel for visitors coming to the United States expires. And it is what we're hearing is that President Biden will be changing that and allowing some of those students to come into the country to help out. So we're hoping to hear good news over the next couple of days. And a lot of, not only Chatham Bars is dependent on that, but I know a lot of other businesses in town and on the Cape are relying on that also.
Okay, thanks. When I was talking with Senator Sears this morning, I think there is some effort underway to put together a vaccine program for the most vulnerable workforce. It could be very helpful for the summer. So I don't know where that's going yet, but I think everybody's thinking in the direction of support and safe and healthy environment to build the economy back up again.
Absolutely, we have to make sure we remain safe. There's no question. But just opening up to food service employees just a few days ago is going to be a tremendous help for our local restaurants and bars and cafes and things like that to keep everyone open and safe and prosperous.
Great, Thank you, Gary. We're going to ask some questions and then we'll move on. Dean has his hand up. Dean?
Thank you. Gary, do you foresee private food establishments imposing vaccination certification requirements for people to dine at their facilities? Or I'm not talking about a government-imposed so-called passport. Do you think private businesses are likely to do that in the coming months?
I think it's going to be up to the business. I think I haven't heard people talking about, to be honest with you, Dean. I think actually it's really pretty interesting is that some people actually will present their vaccination cards, as I'm in good health, but obviously they still have to follow proper protocol. But we're seeing people that are really focused on it, but I don't think any businesses are going to do that additionally.
I think I heard that Staples is offering to laminate people's vaccination. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Dean. Any further questions for the team, Chamber and Chatham Merchants and Gary? Any from the general public? All right, I'm not hearing any. Thank you very much, Gary. Thank you very much, Susan and Mary. To be continued. And I think we'll hear from you probably again in another 3 months if we don't have the, we will have the Board of Health joint select board meeting. So we'll continue the conversation. So thank you for the update. Okay. Our next agenda item is the public comment period. And this is where the public may comment on any of our business agenda items, which I mentioned before and that are in the agenda online. So I'm not trying to move this along too fast, but we do have a full packet today. So I see Michael Westgate's hand is up. Michael?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did send an email out to you and to the rest of the board. If you did receive that, I'll just hit the highlights.
Sure, go ahead. We did receive it. Yes, thank you.
Great. I'm testifying as an individual tonight. I'd like to go beyond the South Coastal Harbor Plan Committee's unanimous vote in favor of the Upweller being the site for the boathouse. Everyone knows this is a historic structure. Not everybody knows that this is a historic district. The historic business district is obviously a good fit for a historic structure. My second point is that it's a lot cleaner to have one entity do the construction from start to finish rather than have a private entity begin and then the town complete. So it would simply be my advice to the board, if you can, that it be the board, that it be the town that does that takes full responsibility. Third, I want to acknowledge again tremendous efforts by Dave Dougherty to save the boathouse. We wouldn't be having this discussion tonight if it wasn't for Dave. I do have two questions for him through you, Madam Chair, either now or when you get to the discussion point.
If you want to mention the questions, we can we'll reiterate them at that time.
The first is whether there are any contingencies to his offer. And then the second one is whether he'd be willing to see the funds that he and others raise deposited into a town account for the sole purpose of covering the costs that he's proposed relative to the boathouse. My next point is on Harding's Beach, has been mentioned as a potential alternate site. On the plus side, there would obviously be greater space to present panels and so forth for the public. On the negative side, it would be vacant 9 months out of the year, and I am concerned that there would be a candidate for vandalism. The final point that I have is that the boathouse, if it does not return to Chatham as part of this project, I'm truly concerned that it may never return to Chatham. And then just to wrap it up, it's obviously you as the select board that have to make this decision. But I do hope that you can make it in the very near future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael. Any other public comments before we move forward? Okay, Elaine Gibbs. Go ahead, Elaine.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My comments are regarding the Coast Guard Boathouse donation.
Go ahead.
And they are primarily about the memorandum of agreement between the town and the authority that was signed last week, March 22nd. I believe there are a number of technical questions open to interpretation that hopefully will be clarified tonight. The third, whereas on page 1 states that the donors engaged in efforts to secure funding to relocate the boathouse to include a pending application to the CPC. However, it doesn't indicate the CPA amounts applied for, and CPA funds are taxpayer money simply coming out of a different bucket and therefore should not be viewed as or considered as part of a funding donation that would reduce the town's cost, because it is a cost to the town. On page 2, there are 8 terms and conditions. Number 2 states the donor shall undertake at its sole cost and expense to relocate to Chatham. But I think that language is in conflict with page 1 where it says it would include CPA funds, which again is an expense to Chatham taxpayers, not the donor. Number 2 also states that estimated costs associated with relocation are in attachment A. The attachment wasn't in the package, and I requested a copy. Bob Duncanson responded that the attachment has not been developed in detail yet. So despite executing the document, we don't have the donor's actual projected costs within the agreement to relocate the boathouse. And there's no attachment regarding anticipated sources of funding by the donor, exclusive of CPA funding, that would potentially result in $814,000 in savings, according to the spreadsheet we were provided. I think we need to feel confident that the funding from other sources will be met before we move forward. Number 4 states, upon delivery to the designated location, the town shall accept title of the boathouse in its then condition and assume sole responsibility of costs and liabilities of whatever nature from that point. It doesn't say after an inspection when it arrives. So what if damage claims it? Would the donor carry insurance covering relocation? And both of those things in terms of an inspection and insurance, I think should be within the document. Number 3 states, after an analysis, the select board will determine if 90 Bridge Street is location or alternatively relocated to another parcel. So under the 8 terms and conditions which have been agreed to, I don't see where there's any option for Chatham to withdraw from receiving the boathouse, except number 6, which states upon inspection prior to transport, the town may, for just cause, decline acceptance. But just cause is not defined in the agreement. So under the 8 terms, this appears to me that Chatham's only escape clause from this signed agreement, if costs are deemed too high for the upweller, is that as the agreement is written, we still have that coming to town and we have no place to put it. Any other use or location like a bathhouse at Harding's, I would be so offended to have that beautiful structure used as a bathhouse, frankly, but that's never been discussed. And that would be for a purpose not in our 5-year capital plan and required more feasibility studies and millions of dollars over and above the cost of the upweller, which was the whole point of this. So I think that should be put in there somewhere. Finally, 8 states that this agreement is conditioned on the donor securing funding by January of 2023 and transporting the boathouse by July of 2023. That's 2+ years from now. I don't know how the town could sign a document allowing that long to obtain private funding and to go along with this agreement. What do these dates do to the 2021 cost comparison for a new building? And does this mean we have to wait until January 2023 to know if private funding has been secured before we can terminate the agreement and proceed with an upweller construction? In terms of other financials, the town received a Seaport grant of $295,000 that we assumed would reduce taxpayer costs. But instead, the GI Engineering has increased their costs by $301,000, eating it all up. So since we're only in the preliminary stages of design, I think this should raise financial red flags that as we move forward, the cost projections will continue to go up. I'm not sure why this agreement was executed last week before selectmen and the public had an opportunity to read the proposed agreement. I think it has been written in favor of the donor, and our hands have been tied for potentially 2 years with significant design expenses in the interim to see if it's feasible. Hopefully I'm wrong, and when we have the discussion, that will be clarified. But I hope we can amend or terminate this agreement, as I think it was premature, in my view, to execute it at this point without further investigation and more input as to how much money would be coming in to reduce the cost. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Okay, I see somebody who's only identified as MT on my Teams, so please identify yourself.
Mike.
Before... Oh, hi, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Elaine Gibbs has gone through that very thoroughly, and I understand the desire to return the boathouse to Chatham, but that memo of understanding that's been signed for the boathouse is really concerning to me, especially like Elaine, as I don't recall seeing any discussion or approval by the board. It seems to me that Mr. Doherty does a great job, but he regards CPA funds as his right. There's no commitment in that MOA for private funds. They're mentioned, but there's no commitment for Mr. Doherty or anybody else to provide private funds. So he's assuming, and he's asked the CPA to provide $250,000 of CPA funds for moving the boathouse to a location as yet unspecified. Then after its delivery to Chatham, the MOA states that the town will assume all costs. That's very open-ended. On Nantucket, for an identical boathouse, the cost for restoration and preservation exceeded $500,000. So just very briefly, with all the emphasis on affordable and attainable housing, et cetera, this is a major concern for the use of CPA funds, which are really town funds, as Elaine Gibbs pointed out. And in our last meeting, the CPC, Community Preservation Committee, has already indicated a reluctance to vote funds for FY22, that's this year, to move the boathouse, which won't be need to be moved until FY23. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other comments, public comments, before we move forward? Mr. Farrell.
Good evening.
Hi.
I thought perhaps it would be wise to try and react or respond to some of the comments that were brought up by the previous three speakers.
Jack, we're going to be able to discuss this as a board going forward. This isn't really a deliberative time.
That's fine.
So if you want to just wait, we're happy to bring that forward in our conversation.
Okay, let's hope I can remember everything.
Okay, well, make note.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other comments? Okay. All right. I guess we're going to move forward then. And our next item is the consent agenda, and that's a grant of access easement to the town for the bike path at Bailey's Path. And this is Bailey's Path Nominee Trust, W. Marsh upon roadways identified as Aunt Kate's Way and Bailey's Path, and parcel B, the bike path. So do we have a motion to accept the consent calendar unless somebody wants to move it out of the consent for further discussion? Peter, everybody's muted.
Of course I did. All right. Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
For the second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's take a vote.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Comment.
Before you vote, I don't want to take this off the calendar, but I think there are two edits that need to be made on the grant document for Shauna to take up with town council before it's finalized.
Okay, go ahead, Dean.
They're relatively minor, and if you're looking at they're both on the first page. It says grant of easement.
Okay.
In the third sentence, which says grants to the town of Chatham, after the zip code, we need to put in parentheses and in quotes grantee to identify the town.
Okay.
It's the grantee, and then in the very last paragraph, I think the personal pronoun I needs to be inserted at the introduction of the paragraph, so it would say I, William Marsh, trustee.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. And you seconded that?
I did.
Okay, great. Then we will take a vote. Okay. Peter.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
The chair says aye. All right, great. That's moving forward. All right, so now we're going to go into our business agenda. This is board discussion items. The first item of business is consider extension of commercial 2020-2021 shellfish permits to June 1st, 2021. I'm recusing myself from this discussion and potential vote, and Vice Chair Kokolas will take over the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Shireen mentioned, this is consideration extension of our commercial 2021 shellfish permits to June 1st, 2020 to June 1st, 2021. And I believe Renee is on. If you'd like to give us a little background, Renee. If not, I can move ahead with it.
Yes, hello to everyone this evening.
We're getting a lot of feedback. Yeah.
Hello, is this better?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, I had my television on in the background. My apologies. I also believe that Jamie Bassett is on the line, who's the chair of the Shellfish Advisory Committee. This was voted on at the last meeting, and they recommended that the Board of Selectmen review their request, and that would be simply to postpone the deadline to June 1st of this year, giving our commercial fishermen an extra month to renew their permits. This would be for renewals only.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, you have any comments?
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Sure, it's good.
Okay, great. And hello to everyone. Pretty much as Renee mentioned, we're still in, we're still in the woods here with COVID, I think, and allowing an extra month for the shell fishing community to be able to renew their licenses, I think would help. It's just started to get warm in the last week and a half, and it was a long winter, and but shell fishermen are starting to get out, and I think that most of them would like to be able to pay for their own licenses with their own money, but might need a little bit more time. That's really the long and short of it.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Any questions or comments from the board? I see Jeff and then Corey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I move to extend the expiration of 2020 to 2021 commercial shellfish permits from April 30th, 2021 to June 1st, 2021.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. And then Corey. Hand start.
No, I was ready to. No, Jeff made the motion. I'm good with this.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's take a vote. Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Nicastro.
Aye.
Vice Chair says aye. Passed. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. We go on to our next agenda item. Turn over to the chair.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, this is 90 Bridge Street project, Coast Guard Boathouse donation update. And we'll hear from the Director of Natural Resources, Dr. Duncanson. And then we'll move through a little bit of the background and discussion going forward. Bob?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. As the board has a memo in your packet, which lays out a little bit of the history of how we got to tonight. We were before the board back in February to provide an update on the 35% design plans for the 90 Bridge Street project. And as part of that, we also provided an updated cost estimate, which outlined costs associated with the project, as well as at that point in time, costs associated with the due diligence inspection that the town commissioned back in November, December, when the idea of the Coast Guard boathouse being used as an upweller first came around. And that due diligence inspection was really to answer one pivotal question, and that was, could the Coast Guard boathouse be used as the upweller building? We were moving along at the time for the 90 Bridge Street project. We were completing the 35% design phase, which at that point, centered around a purpose-built building, or a new building, if you will. The Coast Guard boathouse concept came up when it was noticed that the boathouse was up for auction, as well as the town of Hull was moving forward with plans to have the building demolished because of several violations of their conservation as well as zoning regulations. So David Dougherty was the spearhead behind trying to see if the Coast Guard boathouse could be returned to Chatham. So in order to find out whether or not it could be used for the upweller, we commissioned the due diligence inspection by the engineers that were working for the town, both GEI as well as Pomeroy Associates. We sent them up to Hull and asked them, take a look at the building and basically tell us whether or not it could be used for the upweller. That report was completed in December, and we presented that to the board, and they assigned some cost estimates to that as well. So, and then in January and February, we came before the board. We provided you the 35% design update, and Mr. Dougherty came in and presented his group's proposed donation of the boathouse to the town. At your meeting on February 9th, the board voted to accept the Coast Guard boathouse for use by the town of Chatham. However, you did not specify specifically what it would be used for or where it would be located. We at the staff level were asked to go a little bit further and see what additional engineering costs would be incurred to basically take the boathouse and get it to the same point as the 35% design phase as we'd achieved for the purpose-built structure, if you will. So if you let me share my screen here. So this is the cost comparison that we included in your packet for tonight's meeting. So just walking the board as well as the members of the public through this. The first column is the 2019 Conceptual Design. If you remember, we've been working on this project along with a coordinated meeting of the Waterways Advisory Committee, the Shellfish Advisory Committee, and the South Coastal Harbor Plan Committee. And over the course of several years, there was an original 2017 design, which the board felt was A, too expensive, and B, too intense a use for the site, and asked that group to go back and kind of refine that, which we did. And then in 2019, we came back to the board with a different plan, as well as a new cost estimate. And so what you see there in that first column are the various components of the site, as well as the total cost as it was presented to the board at your meeting in 2019. So the total cost at that point was estimated at $3,440,000. Now, a couple of significant things that I need to point out with regard to that. Those costs did not include the upweller fit out. So the basic internal structures inside the upweller were not included in that cost estimate. That cost estimate also included only a 10% contingency. Generally, you don't go with a 10% contingency until you reach final design and you're ready to go out to bid. Usually prior to that point, you would carry at least a 20% contingency. However, the engineer's 2019 estimate did only contain a 10% contingency. And then one of the other significant differences was in later versions, more recently, we've utilized flupsies because we're planning to put a series of floats around the upweller pier. We decided that it made sense to basically have those floats be multi-use. So in addition to floats for boats to tie up on, we also included the cost of having those floats basically be flupsies, which are a in-water way of growing shellfish. And, I can get into detail if you want, but basically, the shellfish are put into pens that are held by the floats, and then they can grow out further in the natural environment. So those costs were not included in that original plan. So then in late 2020, we had the due diligence inspection conducted, and that's the third column over, labeled 2020 Coast Guard Building Due Diligence Inspection. And that identified some pretty much the same costs in some areas, and I tried to lay these costs out so they were comparable when you go across the various rows. But the bottom line was that plan, based on the due diligence inspection, had a price tag of approximately $5.5 million. And you can see the breakdown of those. Then we had the 2021 35% design with a purpose-built building. And again, you can see the various costs there, and the total cost of that is approximately $4.7 million. And then we have the 2021 building with the IMA, or the memorandum of agreement that was mentioned earlier. And basically that identified some costs that were identified in the due diligence inspection that would be borne by the private group that Mr. Dougherty was spearheading. And so basically the relocation costs, the storage costs, and also some costs, those were the two main items. And then the contingencies were changed based on those items. And then the third item was the demolition of basically the floor in the existing Coast Guard building, which we've talked about before. The current floor is slanted, and so it doesn't really lend itself to use as an upweller. We need a flat floor. And frankly, if we were going to use it for any other use in town, we'd want a flat floor as opposed to the slanted floor. And so when we look at those costs, it comes out at roughly $4.6 million for the costs remaining. Now, there's a number of costs in these various estimates that are the same no matter what option we'd go with. And then things like the bulkhead. There's been a slight increase in the cost of the bulkhead from 2019 up to 2021. And that's just, inflation over that roughly 2-year period. But the bulkhead costs are roughly the same. There's an extension to the T-pier and T-pier floating dock. Those costs are a little higher in the latest versions, but they carry through both the 2021 35% design, the Coast Guard building, and IMA, because they would be the same no matter what actual building was going to be put on top of the pier and the bulkhead and whatnot. And so with that, that's a quick overview of the summary that you have in your packet. And then just kind of touching on a couple of other points as the town. So when we went through that, one of the things that we did in the 2020 due diligence report, as well as the 35% design, is we did carry some funding for additional engineering costs if the Coast Guard boathouse were to be targeted for use at the upweller. And the reason for that is we were already at 35% design for a purpose-built building. But that design work had not been done on the Coast Guard boathouse. So we carried a placeholder in there. We went back to our engineers and asked them to update that and provide us with a proposal of exactly what it would cost to do to basically bring the Coast Guard boathouse design from basically 0 up to 35% design. And that's the proposal from GEI that you had included as part of your packet. And that cost was basically estimated at $58,500 in additional engineering services to get, if the Coast Guard boathouse were to be used for the upweller, that would get the Coast Guard boathouse from basically 0 up to 35% design. And then all the rest of the engineering costs for the boathouse are already in our contract with GEI. So our current contract with GEI basically takes this project all the way through the bid phase. So once we determine whether or not it's going to be the Coast Guard boathouse or a purpose-built building, the funding is already there, and we already have a contract with GEI to go through the rest of those steps. So the only new work is basically to get the Coast Guard boathouse up to the same position we're at with the rest of the components, the bulkhead, the pier, and the purpose-built building, obviously. And then total project cost would still be to be determined. And the reason why I'd say that, as we discussed at previous meetings with the board on this project, we're basically designing and permitting the entire project. That was the direction we were given by the board back in 2019. However, as I said before, that does not mean that everything ultimately has to get built or has to be built all at the same time. Based on our discussions, there's really 2 critical components for immediate construction, if you will. One is the bulkhead, and then 2 is the upweller building and the pier supporting it, if you will, because it makes no sense to go ahead and do the upweller building and pier and then try to figure out how do we construct a revetment after the fact, or a bulkhead after the fact. So we would go ahead and construct the bulkhead and then construct the upweller and pier basically as part of the same project. That does a couple of things for us. One, obviously, it fixes the issue of how do you get the bulkhead constructed. It also expands the size of the site and allows for the parking that we've proposed to be accommodated. But things like the T-pier extension and the float off the T-pier, those, I hate to use the word optional because they've been requested by the community in terms of input from the Shellfish Advisory Committee or the South Coastal Committee or the Waterways Committee during the design process, but they don't have to be built at the same time as some of the other structures. They could be built later in different phases. There are some other things like the dredging allowance that would be important at the initial, the initial phase, because that factors into getting the pumps in the proper water depth to be able to get water into the upweller. Because as you know, basically the upweller is nothing without the water flowing through it. And so we want to make sure that we have the proper depth. We're still working with our consultants to identify the appropriate types of pumps and location for those pumps. But I think we're making a lot of progress on that. Renee and Rachel Hutchinson, our propagation manager, have been spending a lot of time with the consultants working out the specifics of the pumping system, because that really is the most critical part of the upweller system. So I think those are the primary things that I wanted to bring up tonight. And I know that David Dougherty's on the call, Jack Farrell's on the call. So I think at this point, probably the easiest way is to just take questions and have that discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Ultimately, we have to determine the boathouse's location. And, there's been a lot of moving pieces around this project. The explanation about the phased approach to the project, the permitting of the entire project, let's keep it in mind. The understanding that we've had for the last couple of years from the board's perspective is that we wanted to make the upweller a priority on that site. So I think that we're having that discussion now as we move forward. Do you want to note that, obviously, from the prior agenda item, that Constable Gagne is on the call, as well as probably the chairman of the Shellfish Advisory Committee still. So Dean's hand is up, and then Peter's. So go ahead, Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a couple of questions and comments. First, I was, I think, the sole vote back on February 9th, if that's the correct date, against the acceptance of the boathouse, not because I don't favor the return of the boathouse. I'd like to see it returned. I'd like to see it restored to its original colors. I hope that's possible. But at that point, we hadn't really determined what to do with it or where to put it. And I think we do have a very detailed plan at this point before us, so the picture is a little different. Bob, I just really wanted to ask two questions and then a comment. It says on the in the proposal from GEI on the first page that, I'm sorry, on the second page, paragraph, item number 6 up at the top, no fire alarm or fire suppression systems will be required. Is that, I was puzzled by that. Do you have any comment on that? Why those would not be required?
Yeah, we've had discussion. I've had discussions with the building commissioner. In all likelihood, I mean, we probably have a fire alarm system installed. We do not necessarily need a fire suppression system. In other words, a sprinkler system, because this will not be a public and open to the public building. There will not be any habitable space in it. However, as you may be aware, we're also in the process of finalizing design for new water main on Bridge Street, as well as the sewer system. As part of the water main design, we have incorporated 2 water connections coming into the 90 Bridge Street lot. One of which would be a 4-inch system, which would be able to provide water to a fire suppression system. There's been discussion about it. As I said, there is no habitable space. There's going to be a lot of water in the building. But if we did make the decision to go ahead and put a fire suppression system in, that would have to be designed by a different engineer. Those are designed by engineers that specialize in fire suppression systems. So that would not be included in the 35% design phase, which is covered by this proposal, but would be basically dealt with as part of further engineering, taking the 35% design up to 100%. Okay.
The reason I asked the question was because the one of the earlier renditions of the purpose-built building had a facility for the public to, I guess, sit on the deck or stand on the deck and inspect what's going on inside, because I think the sides of the building were going to be open or they were lifted upward. Is that not going to be the case if it's the boathouse?
Yes, if it was the boathouse, and even the purpose-built building design has switched a little bit. We have gotten away from those big open garage doors, if you will. They were originally intended to deal with floodplain issues, but we subsequently learned that we can provide the necessary compliance with the floodplain with flood vents. So we don't need to have those big garage doors, if you will, in some of the earlier views. And frankly, it wasn't in character with other buildings along the Chatham waterfront. So we've kind of gone back, and if you let me share my screen quickly again. which figure is it? Yeah, these are some of the more recent views, you know, conceptually kind of showing what the Coast Guard building looks like and what the purpose-built building looks like. This is one of the gable ends, and then this would be a side view. So you can see the look is pretty much mimicked between the two buildings. We're also working off the view, the design for the under construction boathouse at the on Stage Harbor, right next to the Harbor Masters building, as well as a similar view that we're looking at for the shelter at the trap dock, because we felt that these designs were more in keeping with the, you know, historic nature of the Chatham Harbor waterfront. As you can see on the gable end views, though, we would still have large doors that could open, so the public could look in and see the Upweller facility. You know, we don't want people going inside because obviously it's a working environment, but we do want to maintain that educational component to whatever building we end up with, either the Coast Guard building or a purpose-built building.
So this is interesting because it's now not so much the visitor attraction that the earlier design showed, and that I would submit would put less stress on the parking.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, we will still have the deck all the way around the building for people to come down and view Stage Harbor and all. And I suspect that given our experience with the existing Upweller, as you know, in the lower level of the Harbor Masters building, we will still continue to see a fair amount of public interest, school groups and whatnot. We just won't have as many big doors around the building, but we will have big doors at both gable ends so that people can definitely see in and be educated with what's going on down there. So we do still have that educational component as a significant part of the project.
Do you think that, or do the engineers at this point, does anyone at this point think that that the boathouse can be repainted, restored to its original colors?
We are moving forward. My direction to the engineers is we're going to try to mimic the red roof and white siding, white shingles that were there when, you know, in its heyday, if you will. Okay. We don't see that as impossible. We may have some issues just getting the red shingles and in a type that we know, but you know, we're not to that level of detail yet. But okay, we are trying to bring it back historically.
I hope we could do that. One other question on the memorandum of agreement, and this sort of ties in with some of the questions that were posed by Ms. Gibbs. In paragraph 2, it puts the onus on the donor to pay for the costs of maintenance, relocation, immediate repairs, and so forth. And yet, as I read the engineering proposal, it talked about our people going up to Quincy and handling that work. So I'm a little bit confused as to whether there's an inconsistency there.
No, I don't think there is. The discussions that we've been having over the last several months is that the work would be undertaken by contractors hired by the private entity, if you will. But our engineers basically would design as part of their proposal and whatnot, what those immediate repairs and changes should be, and they would have their staff on site overseeing the work. You know, one of the things that we were always cognizant of is that if the town undertakes that work, it all has to be bid out and done at prevailing wage. Where if a private entity were to undertake that work, that doesn't come into play. And so it would be theoretically cheaper. But we did want to make sure that our engineers had oversight of that to make sure it was done in accordance with, you know, with their designs, if you will, and to their, you know, our standards, so that when the boathouse came to Chatham, that everything would be ready to go. Because the idea is basically, while that work is underway off-site, we would be building the bulkhead and then building the pier and the cement pad on which the building would be placed. And so you basically barge the boathouse down, lift it up with a crane, and put it right on that concrete pad without having to do any further, and then from then on, it's all basically cosmetic and interior work, for the upweller kind of thing. But all the major structural work that would be necessary, cutting out the floor and whatnot, and any repairs to the building to make it weather tight would be done up in Quincy before it got back to Chatham. And that's one of the reasons, and I know there was some concern about the time frames. Those time estimates that are in the agreement basically came based on my review of how long it would take us, meaning the town, to get final designs done, get the permitting done, and then construct the bulkhead and the pier upon which to place the building. Because the one thing we don't want to do is have to move the building multiple times. So we really didn't want the building coming back to Chatham until we only have to lift it off a barge and put it right on the concrete pad for us. We did talk about, if necessary, some kind of an interim move, but that gets much more expensive and complicated. If we have to move it someplace temporarily, where do we put it? The 90 Bridge Street site wouldn't be big enough because it would prevent other work from going on the site. Trying to temporarily store it in a place like the Hardings Beach parking lot would be difficult because you can't get a barge close enough to just lift it once to get it off the barge into the parking lot. So we really worked out a schedule that said, let's just only have to move it once, off the barge, right onto the concrete pad. And so looking at those dates and how long we anticipated it would take to get there, that's why those dates are the way they are in the memorandum of agreement.
Thanks. I do have some final comments about relating to the financials, but I did want to confirm for the benefit of the public that the memorandum of agreement was drafted by town council and presented to Mr. Doherty for his signature, and he signed it without changes. Is that correct, Jill?
It is correct, and this is in follow-up to the board's action on February 9th to accept the donation.
Okay.
Right.
So I just wanted to, Bob, tell me if I'm wrong, but if you strip away the items that are extraneous to the upweller, the pier T-pier extensions, the T-pier floating docks, the items that you indicate could be delayed or perhaps not done at all, but I understand the committees would like to be done. And if you put aside the relocation cost and the immediate structural repairs that are needed to protect the building.
Mm-hmm.
As I read this, it's cheaper for the town to take the boathouse and use that as the shell for the upweller than to build a new building. Am I correct?
That is the way the numbers came out when I finally got them all in one spreadsheet. Yes.
I think, and do we know how much cheaper? I mean, is it $375,000 cheaper, which is the cost of a new upweller building, or is it something less than that?
I'd have to run the numbers. I mean, if you look at the bottom line between the projects, with a purpose-built building, it comes out at roughly 4.7 million. With the Coast Guard boathouse, it's roughly 4.68 versus 4.74. So
about 80.
Yeah, about $80,000 difference between the two, where the Coast Guard building is cheaper.
And the original cost analysis showed that the boathouse was going to cost $40,000 more. The building itself, not the relocation. Okay.
Yeah.
And I would also like to point out that, and I respect what the Community Preservation Committee has done. They basically have been looking for some direction from the select board, which I hope we can give tonight, to be honest with you. So they've deferred on this. But my understanding, and I was told this by people that know, that some years ago, the town of Chatham used community preservation funds, several $100,000, to move the Nickerson family house.
That's right.
Which is a private building. So there's precedent for spending a significant amount of money of community preservation funds. Mm-hmm. So I just really want to point out that whether whether Mr. Doherty is able to raise $250,000 or something close to that to relocate and to store and to do immediate repairs, or whether that money comes from community preservation funds, the actual cost of using this boathouse and putting it in Stage Harbor at 90 Bridge Street for the upweller is less. And at the worst, it's equal. And I think that's a significant piece of information. Now, I said months ago that CPC funds are taxpayer money. I totally get that. But when you use CPC funds, you're not raising the tax rate, because that's an automatic surcharge of 3% on the tax rate, on the annual tax rate, on the tax bill, I'm sorry. So I could live with, as a taxpayer, I could live with the town taking this boathouse, using it as the upweller, on the understanding that that there would be either a combination of private funds or CPC funds, or frankly, even entirely CPC funds, to store it, do immediate repairs, and relocate it down to Chatham. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, but I'm anxious to hear what others have to say. And I'll stop at this point, but thank you for allowing me that time, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Dean. Peter, you're next. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Bob. I especially appreciated your comments on, and I'll say it wrong, flupsies, because I thought they were something separate, but I could see that they're integral to what you're going to do in the upweller. I had another of smaller financial questions that I was going to lead into what Dean ended up with, in a way, as far as the upweller. I mean, as far as delaying and what the overall numbers mean. I guess I'd like to just get at more details on what we're going to do. I understand an MOU, and you get an MOU between you have an agreement between the two parties. Now, when you said our engineers are going to be involved, I was wondering how much detail are you expecting to see? Do you see some sort of an integration set of, and it doesn't have to be detailed, but specifications on what's going to be done by each party? And if you're going to have your specifications, what's being done, it's going to be an agreement on what's happening. But when that boathouse shows up and we're going to make a decision, and I'm not saying you move it and then you're going to make a decision, but you're going to make a decision based upon certain criteria. And usually you have those specifications kind of set out in advance. Now, it doesn't have to be that detailed, like when you put the space station up and you have to make sure all the integration parts all fit together, but you still have, at a gross level, being able to be able to do that. I guess I'll start with that question first.
Yeah, if you look at the engineer's scope of services under task 1, number 3, they will develop within 2 weeks of conducting a site inspection the list of immediate repairs to mitigate further deterioration, because that's one of the things that we were concerned about is, if the boathouse is sitting up in Quincy for another 2 years, we want to make sure it doesn't deteriorate any further, which then potentially leads to additional costs. There are some holes in the roof that were put there when it was moved. We want to make sure they don't have to be totally restored, because obviously it's going to be moved at least one more time to get it back here. But we want those, holes properly patched for at least temporarily, so that there isn't further deterioration in the building. So the engineers would develop the appropriate recommendations and specifications to have that occur, and then it would be up to the private party to undertake those with our engineers' oversight.
And I guess just to follow up on that is our engineers are going to be involved with that, through the process. Is
yes.
What you said.
Yes.
Okay. And back to what you just said, talked about of the tasks that were involved, and you mentioned number 3, and in the summary it goes, number 3 through 7 are going to be taken care of with the 58.5, as far as getting the Coast Guard up to 35% engineering. Is that true? It's those 7 that you're talking about, 3 through 7 here.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Yeah, and it sort of makes sense to me. I mean, I get it. Let me say that overall, I agree that we have a plan now, and we have an understanding of where the funding is and who's going to do what. That I understand. There were some questions about the details. We can get in a little bit more about the memorandum, but the MOU is an MOU. Specifications are another set of criteria that are going to be used by the engineers, and that's what's, in my humble opinion, what's really important. CPA funds. I was going to mention that I had heard about, the Nickerson move, and I guess if there's only one other thing you could mention and remind me, there are two contingencies added to the boathouse of a 20% or 25%, and then it was a 20 and 25%. Could you go over what those are?
Sure. Let me just clarify one thing.
Right.
So in order to have our engineers provide all the total oversight while the boathouse is undergoing repairs and modification up in Quincy, it would include, in addition to the 58.5, also option number 2 for 33,000, which is the construction support. That provides us having the engineers on site in Quincy while all the various work is being done to monitor whichever contractor is hired by the third party. So the 58.5 basically takes the boathouse from 0% design to 35%. So it's comparable to where we are currently with the purpose-built building. But then to have the engineers provide that oversight of the work going on in Quincy would be another 33,000.
Okay.
And then in terms of your question regarding the contingencies. So normally when, there's generally several phases to a project. First is conceptual phase. You do very little engineering, but you kind of do sketches on paper and whatnot. And generally when you're cost estimating at the conceptual phase, you generally carry a 20 to 25% contingency. It's fairly high because you haven't done a lot of the nitty gritty engineering work, if you will. Then once you've finished all your engineering work and you have bid ready documents going out to a contractor to actually bid on it, you generally drop that contingency down to 10%, because by that point you've got all the details. So there's really nothing left to chance, if you will, from an engineering point of view. So the only thing you're carrying contingency for is, during construction, if the owner wants to make some changes, or during construction, if something on the site is found to be different than you thought it was. So you can drop your contingency down. When we do wastewater projects with DEP, we carry a 20 to 25% contingency. But then when we go out to bid, we're required by DEP to drop the contingency down to 10%. So that's why I said, when the original conceptual design estimate in 2017 and then updated in 2019, the engineers at that point only carried 10%. In reality, they should have been carrying at least 20% contingency. And then that's what we're carrying now. And the difference between the 20 and 25% is the 20% is on the purpose-built building where there's been more engineering work done. The 25% is being carried on the Coast Guard boathouse because there's really been no detailed engineering done on that yet. So when the due diligence inspection was done, the engineers and Pomeroy Associates wanted to make sure that they were carrying enough in case there was something that wasn't seen when they did their basic inspection of the building. So that's the difference.
That's good. No, thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Shireen. Thanks, Bob. I just want to be clear on the costs. Generally, I'm very much in favor of 90 Bridge to locate an upwell. I think folks know that. And certainly want it to be functional, attractive, and if possible, historic. It would be, I think it's a great concept to have the Coast Guard boathouse land there and house our upweller. I just want to be real clear on that fourth column of cost, Bob, and I hate to go through it, but what would the cost be that you would not include in the 4686 in that column that you think might be deferred or, deferred? And I tried to do it the other way and I got lost because I think pretty much everything else needs to be there, but.
Yeah, I think you could defer the T-pier extension for 133,000.
Got it.
You could defer the T-pier floating dock for 100,000. And I think everything else, you could defer the restroom. In the original conceptual design for 90 Bridge Street, we had a composting toilet at roughly estimated cost of around $60,000 or so, and that cost is included in the 1.4 million for the quote upweller pier in that conceptual cost estimate. Now that we're bringing sewer to Bridge Street, we took advantage of that, and we're going to put a sewer stub there and put a regular bathroom in, which the engineers are estimating at 30,000. You could defer that, but keep in mind your nearest restrooms are over at the Old Mill Boatyard complex. So, from our perspective, it makes sense to go ahead and put a public restroom facility at that location. But, you could defer that. It's only 30,000, so it doesn't really, change the price a whole lot. So those are really the two things, the T-pier extension and the T-pier floating docks. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was, the newest cost estimates do include flupsies in the floats. Obviously, you could get rid of the flupsy component, but we're still planning to put floats around the pier so that boaters can come in and tie up, and the shellfish department has a place to moor their boats and whatnot. The cost differential between a regular float and a flupsy float, that's one of those things that I've had conversations with the shellfish warden about. That differential between those costs could be funded out of the propagation fund.
Okay.
I don't have a definitive cost for you tonight as what that differential is, but that's another way. We've been looking for various sources of funding that could reduce the overall cost of the project. So there are some components that could be paid for out of the propagation fund. And then one thing we haven't talked about tonight, but we mentioned in other presentations, we're always looking for grant money. As mentioned earlier, we did get an SEC, a Seaport Economic Council grant for engineering. We fully expect that we will be applying to the Seaport Economic Council for construction grant funding, which, for any one project in any one year, you can request $1 million. A couple of years ago, we did try to get a Kennedy salt install grant for the upweller interior, if you will. We will obviously continue to look for those grant options. So, just because you see a project at 4.6 million doesn't mean the town is going to end up funding that. I mean, I can't guarantee you that we'll get grant money. We were very surprised with the trap dock when we got engineering grant from the Seaport Economic Council, but that didn't get a construction grant. That's very unusual. Usually if you get an engineering grant, you then get a construction grant. For whatever reason, it didn't happen in that case. But we think because this basically covers the whole gamut of recreational use, potentially some limited commercial use, education components, and all those kinds of things. And when I say commercial use, the upweller supports a large segment of our commercial shellfishing industry by providing that upweller grow out service. We really think that this is an appropriate project for the Seaport Economic Council. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure the board and the public are aware that, we're constantly trying to get grant money for these projects.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bob. I think it's great grist for a grant as well. I think that we may have some promise there. Just a couple quick follow-ups, if I might.
Yep.
The one line that says engineering Coast Guard building for 50K,
Yes.
is that the 58.5 for GEI?
That is now, yes, we were carrying that 50,000 as a placeholder. We now have the 58.5.
So I add 8,500. And then what about the 33 that you mentioned? The 33K?
The 33 was not included in here, but the 33 would be to provide that engineering service of the renovations and all that take place off-site. So basically to have an engineer up in Quincy overseeing any of the work that's done by a third party.
Okay, so if I take out the T-pier extension and the T-pier floating dock, and I add $8,500 for engineering costs that aren't in the schedule, and I keep the restrooms in, and I add 33K, I get for the extra engineering cost for when it's up in Hull or whatever the heck it is, Quincy. Well, 4.494. So I'll call it $4.5 million, 4.494. Now, that is to Selectman Nicastro's point, very close and or under what we had before when we were doing a purpose-built building there. I have two more technical questions. This building, whether or not it's Coast Guard or purpose-built, is going to go out over piers, over the water.
Right.
Okay. And then we're going to pour a cement slab over that structure, over that foundation of piers, if you will.
Yep.
And part of the waiting period here is to get permitting for that design. Right. Is that why it's going to take a couple of years now?
Yes. We're hoping, if you guys give us the direction tonight, the engineers estimate they can have the plans completed by July 1st of this year. We're then estimating a year for permitting because of the fact that the bulkhead is new and the pile supported pier for the building is new. So, it will take a while to permit those. Obviously, if it happens sooner, that's great. Given the location, we're not planning any construction in the summer. And so we were assuming that construction of the bulkhead and the pier would begin in September of 2022. The engineers estimated about a 9-month construction period, which would bring us into spring of 2023. And so that's why, then we would have everything ready. The Coast Guard boathouse could be brought down and just plopped on the pier sitting there waiting for it. Or you construct the purpose-built building at that point, which either.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the length of time that the permitting is going to take, or the potential length of time, I should say, that permitting is going to take, because it is such a sensitive area. And then I totally agree with your notion of one lift. And I also want to point out that if we are going to use the Coast Guard boathouse for the upweller, we do need to keep that building in some repair while it waits 2 years or plus. So I think those are dollars, well spent. If we're going to use it, let's maintain it as best we can. It's an older building and it's been in some disrepair. I also want to state that 4.494, that $4.5 million assumes that we're going to get 450K somewhere, be it from CPA, be it from private funds or wherever. But that's net of $450,000 of relocation and storage monies. Okay, I just want to make that point very apparent. And I want to hear from the rest of the folks here tonight, Corey and Shireen and Mr. Farrell and Mr. Doherty. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Corey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to reiterate previous comments that have already been covered, but I do want to add a couple more things to the discussion. I'm very much supportive of preserving the Coast Guard boathouse. I think, we had an opportunity years ago. This is the second bite at the apple. It's a very expensive apple, but I think it's from a preservation perspective, it's the right move to do. We've accepted it. If we're going to use it, the upweller seems to really the most practical place to put it. It's going to replace the purpose-built concept costs in a sense. Going to Harding's Beach or somewhere else, it's just going to be another capital expense, as has been mentioned before. that we really don't have queued up right now. So I think we're going to move forward with this. Let's go at 90 Bridge Street, and move it forward in that sense. The comment about it not being a public building, I understand the technicality of it's not going to be, habitable space and, interior uses and stuff, but I think we do need to recognize, the upweller, and if the Coast Guard building is used, the public will come to this site, whether it be by foot, by bicycle, by vehicle. There's limited parking on site. I know there's some parking in the area. So I do think we just need to be conscious of any strain that we may put in that area and how to address it. I think it can be addressed. I think it can be managed. But I do think there's going to be a draw from both just the historic perspective, the educational components, and everything else. If we do it right, that's what you build it, they will come. So I do think we will have a draw of individuals wanting to see the site. If we do use the Coast Guard building, I guess we're all in on 90 Bridge Street. We're going to move forward, and I guess I would pause with taking a couple of these items out of the queue for consideration. And the reason I would say that is, just like the T-Pier expansion, as an example, in 2 years, it's gone from a cost estimate of 55.9 to 133.5. It's more than doubled. And if you delay things traditionally, they go get more expensive. So if we delay things much further, not only will they be more expensive, will they even be feasible economically to do? So I would really like some input from those who've already, the waterways committees and such, before we start picking out little pieces, because I am concerned that they may never get put back in. If they're that important, we should identify them and stick with them. If there's a sentiment that we can pick away a couple more pieces, so be it. But I get nervous when you pull things away that it's years and years and years, or never that they ever get put into the puzzle. So I know tonight's discussion is about making a decision about the Coast Guard building. I think, my position is we should put it on 90 Bridge Street, put this plan together, have all the appropriate discussions around it. And my sense is there's a lot of sentimental support for the building, public support for the upweller. And I think this project, while far from inexpensive, has a lot of public support in this community. So, I hope we can make the decision tonight on the location and let the pieces keep falling together. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may just, Corey, to what you said regarding, taking things or pulling some components out, what you see here tonight and what we've presented to you in the past, that is the recommendation of the various committees. That's what we presented to you back in 2019. And the board supported that concept at the time with a positive vote, with all those things on, on the plan, if you will. And that's why we've been moving there. I was strictly answering the question of, if push came to shove and we had to phase anything, what could we conceivably phase? But like with the T-Pier extension, we would anticipate there would be potential cost savings, because you'd have a contractor on site driving pilings for, the upweller building pier, and driving, another half a dozen or dozen pilings for the T-Pier extension. There'd be a savings there, as opposed to, 2 or 3 years later having a contractor have to mobilize back to do that. So I'm not advocating necessarily putting any of that stuff off, at least for the design and the permitting phase. But, a year from now, if it really became a financial issue, there are some things that you could put off. But as you said, there are ramifications.
Thanks. Any other questions, Corey?
Okay. No, thank you.
I just want to speak to that, and I don't want to get into nickel and diming over the T-Pier extension, but I know that the design and the want from the waterways community was prior to the trap dock. And I think if we consider this in a phased approach, I think you're going to realize, or the public's going to realize, that we really don't need that. Commercial activity can go on at the trap dock. This could be recreational and, educational with the upweller. So I think that it could be a real cost savings to eliminate those at some point. Just a quick question on the permitting. So it's a Chapter 91 permitting process that you'd have to go through for this, and would you have to have the design in place in order to start the permitting process?
Yeah, you don't have to have 100% design, but you have to be pretty well along, 75, 80% is done with the design. And yeah, this would require notice of intent from the Conservation Commission, Chapter 91, Army Corps, as mentioned earlier, Historic Business District Commission, potentially the zoning board, because the Coast Guard boathouse is higher than, allowed. So yeah, that's why we're estimating at least a year to get through all the permitting.
Right. And as far as funding is concerned, you guys are really good at finding grant money. I mean, your department has been really good in saving the town a lot of money in some of these bigger projects. So I have confidence you're going to find some good stuff out there. I know you will. So the phase approach, the idea that this potentially is a cost, anticipated costs are less. It's a really good, makes me feel better about this and supporting the Coast Guard station. I had a lot of questions in the beginning. As far as the MOA is concerned, as Jill had mentioned before, the MOA was written by our town council and signed by Mr. Doherty without any question, or revisions actually. I just wanted to hear from perhaps Jack. He was waiting very patiently as we went through all this. He had some issues or some questions thrown at them that he might want to answer. So welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Those questions bothered me more an hour and a half ago than they do now. And at this hour, I'm not going to take up your time. You've been there almost 2.5 hours now, for which we all greatly appreciate your efforts. So we'll leave those for another day. I will say that I'm greatly pleased to hear the discussion this evening. The questions, I'm not a financial guy. I was a history major. My brother was the accountant. So to hear Dean and Jeff, particularly with their backgrounds, ask all of those detailed financial questions to make sure that the board and everyone at home watching on TV has a clear understanding as to what the financial ramifications are. Clearly, the intent on David's part and our preservation group is to apply for, we already have applied for CPC funds. That was based upon precedent that's been set here in town with the Nickerson building, but also precedent set up in Nantucket with the restoration of their boathouse, where CPC was involved in over $1 million worth of funding to make that happen, which is wonderful. So we were not assuming, I kind of just take a little bit of exception to my dear friend Mike's comment that David was assuming that the funds were automatically going to be available. We know that every application has to be approved and considered on its merits. And we will present the merits of this to CPC, hopefully as soon as next week, if you folks agree to move forward. And the most important thing from our standpoint, and I think from the standpoint of the entire project of bringing the Coast Guard boathouse back and making it part of the Upweller project, is that we need to get before the town meeting in June to find out if the most important people agree with all of our assessments that they want to fund the return of the boathouse as part of the Upweller, with your tax rate funds for the project specifically, but also potentially with CPC funds.
Okay.
So I think if we're going to make this happen, and it sounds like the board would like to see it happen, then we really need to continue to move forward. We have a date on Thursday with the Finance Committee if we're going in this direction. And I spoke to Mike Thompson as recently as Sunday about getting before them should both your board and the Finance Committee be supportive. So appreciate all the time and effort that's been put into this. Jill, Pat, Dr. Bob have been tremendous in helping get this thing put together so that it is more understandable for everyone than it was back on February 9th. We're greatly appreciative of all their efforts. We love this project. I have to tell you that the support, the public support that we have gotten has just been uniformly in support of a great project. So we're hopeful that your board will take that vote tonight, and we'll be able to continue moving forward with the FinCom and with CPC and see if we can make this happen at town meeting in June.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to say I was knocked off the internet in the middle of Jeff's presentation. I'm back on, I think, and I think I heard the gist of what Jeff had to say. I just wanted to ask Jack a question. I don't think Dave Doherty's on the call. Maybe he is. Where do things stand in terms of private fundraising, apart from CPC funds? What's the plan there, or what's the status of that? Because Dave has mentioned that in the past.
Right. So obviously, you have to have a project in order to go out and do any fundraising, and we don't have a project yet. Tonight is the first step towards actually having a project. If the board votes this evening to move forward with the boathouse as part of the Upweller project, then Thursday we go to the Finance Committee. Next week, hopefully we go to CPC, and then we'll actually have a project to go out and try and do some fundraising privately as well. In order to make this work financially for the voters, for the taxpayers, we do hope to take advantage of the CPC funds that are set aside for specifically historic preservation. In the history of CPC, they've funded innumerable wonderful projects. But if you really think about it, the ones that really stick out in people's minds would probably be the Orpheum Theater and the Community Center, because they were large projects, probably the largest that were ever funded by CPC. I could be wrong, but they were there for the public to see and to enjoy forever. And they're a part of our daily life, no question. I think this project has the opportunity to fall into that category eventually. And so I do think, without assuming anything, that it is a natural for CPC support. And we hope that that's the direction that the town decides to take. But the final vote will be in June at the town meeting.
Thank you.
David is on the call. He's kind of asked me to take the lead here because of the late hour. But I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
I have another question for you, Jack. The only action we're taking at town meeting would be in potentially support of the CPC money. Why are you going to FinCom before you go to CPC?
Because they schedule us for Thursday, because they want to hear whether or not, whatever your vote is, they want to hear just an explanation as to what we're doing and what some of the other options would be if we don't go Upweller. And if CPC has already been before them and at least spoken to them.
So you will be speaking about the potential CPC funding, is what you're.
Right. CPC has spoken with them.
Okay.
And I've spoken to Mike, and the FinCom contacted us, and they want to stay in the loop. This has all been very fluid. This is, and I want to make the emphasize here, this is a town project that David is helping to facilitate, but this is a town project that Dr. Bob and the engineers are totally in control of. And any selection process of any contractors that are going to do any work up in Quincy will be under their control and under their supervision. This is going to be their project that we're going to help facilitate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. A couple more questions, and then we're going to move for a motion at some point here. So, Dean?
No, I'm done. I just
Peter. Go ahead.
Thank Jack, and also say I think, as I said earlier, I think CPC has approached this very prudently, and I think they'll continue to do that. And I think if we can give them some perspective tonight, that would be helpful for their decision making. Thank you.
Right. It has been a project that has been chicken before the egg sort of scenario, and I think we finally are able to shush some of these things out as we go along. Dean, your hand's down. Peter, you were next, and then Jeff. Unmute yourself, please, Peter.
All right. Thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair. And Jack, just to follow up on the CPC funds, one of the concerns brought up by the committee is that, one, we didn't have a project, and I can understand where they were on that point. They also brought up the point of, do you really need CPC fundings this year, or do you go after it next year, when maybe the priorities may be a little bit better. I understand that you're going after preservation fund. You're looking at this as sort of an anchor for getting more private funds, or can you wait another year? Thank you.
Well, to be truthful, because that's why we're here. I mean, there was a time crunch on the deadline for filing with CPC this year, so David had to move quickly if he was going to create the opportunity for CPC to be involved this year. So it was done very quickly at the last minute. Exactly how this plays out, Peter, David and I haven't had a clue from the beginning, because it really is, as I just stated, it's a town project. Right. And the timing is totally in the control of the town. As Dr. Bob has said, it's going to take over a year of permitting to get the Chapter 91 licenses. So it's totally a town project. We're a very small player in this. We're a facilitator. And David did what I consider the prudent and the right thing, and he filed the application. So does it have to be addressed at this session? Can it be put off till next year? Well, because we do have to do some work on the building. The application now, is really for moving the building. And all we're looking for now is authorization. None of this money that's been applied for is going to be spent until 2023.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so again, the application is not to do the historic preservation work on the building. It's to move the building and to store it there, so that next year we were anticipating applying for specific funds towards the historic preservation aspect of the project.
Okay. It's up to them. Thank you.
All right, Jeff?
Yeah, I was just going to reaffirm that I think this project is in the CPC's sweet spot, if you will, in community preservation. It's historic preservation. It's right in their sweet spot. Right in their sweet spot. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. No more questions for Jack? I don't see. Corey, your hand's up. Go ahead.
No, I was going to throw a motion if you wanted to move this along.
Go right ahead. Let's do it.
All right. I move that the select board determine that the Coast Guard building be relocated to 90 Bridge Street for use as the upweller facility.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Right. Any further discussion? All right, let's take a vote.
Could I hear the motion again? My sound was off when.
Okay,
Corey.
Go ahead, Corey. Can you do that again?
Yeah, I basically said I moved that the select board determined that the Coast Guard building be relocated to 90 Bridge Street to be used for the upweller facility. So we get the location and the use. I think the two areas I need to cover.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and we had a second. So are you all okay with that, Dean?
Yes, thank you very much.
Let's take a vote. Peter?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. All right, 5-0. Great. All right, we're going to move this forward to the next steps. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all your hard work.
And thank you, David, for the work, and Dr. Bob and Renee and her team for getting us the information that we needed to make this decision. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. It is 8 o'clock, and we still have some warrant articles to review and to set forth on the warrant. So first is water operating budget, water capital articles for fiscal year 2022. And Alex is here, and I think, do we have anybody from DPW, or do we have somebody, Dr. Bob doing this, or?
No, Madam Chair, we have our chief water operator, that's right. Tom Barr, and also, I'm not sure what Val's title is. He used to be the chief water and sewer operator, Val Peters, who you've known for a while, who manages our water and sewer project. So we have them to answer any questions. We do not have any staff from DPW with us tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Alex, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
As mentioned in your agenda is a agenda report on the water operating budget as well as some of the water capital articles. So I'll start with the water operating budget. And as you are aware, and just for the public's information, the water department is funded solely through water rates. And so no impact on the tax rate except for a $400,000 contribution by the tax rate to the water department. So looking at FY 2022, the water operating budget is proposed at $3,581,052. And that's an increase of $239,435 over the current year budget. I've listed some of the reasons for the increases, which are mostly contractual. Again, not a lot of staffing in the water department, as it's mostly contractual staffing and some town staff. So again, $400,000 from the tax rate, which covers the town's use of water for hydrants and town buildings, and the remainder, $3,181,000 is coming from the estimated water revenues in FY 2022. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jeff, your hand is up already.
Madam Chair, I would like to move the water operating budget in the amount of $3,581,052 to the warrant.
I do have a
I'd like to
second.
place it on the warrant. I'd like to place the operating budget on the warrant.
Okay, second. All right. Any further discussion? Take a vote. Jeff,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
and chair says aye. Vote to recommend?
Madam Chair, I vote to
Mean
recommend.
motion. Yeah,
Yeah, I
Second.
move to recommend.
move. Second, okay. Any further discussion? All right, let's take a vote. Jeff,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
chair says aye. Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Okay, as I mentioned, we have 3 capital items for the water department. So the first, I'll just go over those. So we have $500,000 for water mains, $75,000 for training field wells number 5 and 8 study, and a design engineering article for wells 10 and 11 at $150,000. The first article, water mains for water main replacement, is sort of an annual article. We've been asking for a certain amount every single year. And this is to replace the older water mains. As we're tearing up streets and doing sewer, we try to partner with that project so we don't have to tear up the roads once. The last funding for this was in May 2020. And again, we're asking for $500,000, which would come from water surplus.
Okay. Questions or motion to place?
Madam Chair, it's Peter.
Peter, go ahead.
Vote to place the water mains in the amount of $500,000 on the warrant.
Second.
Second.
Okay, let's take a vote if there's no further discussion. Dean,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
chair says aye. Motion to recommend.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we vote to recommend the water capital water mains in the amount of $500,000.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Dean. Take a vote. Jeff,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
chair says aye. All right, vote, water capital, training field, wells, iron and manganese study.
Thank you. Yes, this is a funding of $75,000 for a study on the iron and manganese and whether or not it will be necessary for future construction of a water treatment or filter plant at this wells 5 and 8. So again, this is to see what will be necessary in the future, and it again is funding source is through the available funds of the water department.
Great, thank you. Questions or a motion to place?
Madam Chair, I move to place this article for water capital training field wells and manganese study in the amount of $75,000 on the warrant.
Thank you, Dean. Second.
Second.
Okay, Dean, take a vote. Dean,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
chair says aye. Motion to recommend.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, great. Any further discussion? None? Okay, Dean,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
chair says aye. Okay,
Thank you.
Wells
And
10, go ahead.
Sorry. Yes, wells 10 and 11, design engineering for completion and well blending. So in your packet, you will see the agenda report gives a slight explanation on this. So in 2010, there was design for a new chemical feed building for wells 10 and 11, which was halted due to contaminants. A prolonged pumping test has been completed since that time, and the water has been cleared. So this is looking for funds for design and engineering, see what is the best way to move forward, whether we need a separate chemical feed building there or we can blend the water. So again, I think we listed why this is needed because of the amount of water that is used each year and important to meet our water needs. And I think there's other water staff in the audience. They could probably answer more technical questions than I can.
Thank you, Alex. Jeff, you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. I just would like to know when the prolonged pumping test was completed and how long ago we got the results.
I believe that was just a couple of years ago. I don't have the date of that, but that was a recent article within the last 2 or 3 years, I believe. And I see the town manager has popped up, so maybe she has that information.
Madam Chair, I don't, but I know that Val can answer that question for the board.
Hi, Val. If you're still there and you might be muted.
Sorry about that. I'm having a little bit of issues. Actually, I'm going to defer to Tom Barr.
Okay.
He would be more well-versed.
Okay, thank you, Val. Tom.
Good evening, guys. So yeah, the pump study, I want to say 2017 that was completed, but I can definitely verify that. It may have been 18, but I'm pretty positive it was 2017. We got the results back from that test.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? None? Jill, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to note in your book under the CIP program, you might have seen an article that we had as a placeholder for moving forward with the construction. And so I just wanted to let the board know that that could be as much as 3.4 million, but we decided to move forward with the design first and see then, where that comes at it and then present it either next year or the following year. And Tom has indicated just with the pumpage and everything that's happened with people staying here longer and our pumps working longer as well, there's been an impact to our water supply.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. If there's no further questions, a motion to place.
Madam Chair, I move to place this article for water capital wells numbers 10 and 11, design and engineering in the amount of $150,000 on the warrant.
A second.
Second.
Okay, no further discussion. Let's take a vote. Peter?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And chair says aye. Motion to recommend.
So moved.
So moved. Okay.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Let's, and no further discussion. Let's take a vote. Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Chair says aye. All right, thank you. Thank you, Alex, on that. And thank you, Val and Tom, for sticking around for that one question. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for your continued support.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move into our next, which is the Monomoy Regional School District assessment. Alex?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, in your packet, you have the assessment, which is the statutory assessment per the regional agreement for the Monomoy Regional School District. As noted in the packet, the total budget for the school district is $41,561,134 as adopted by the school committee on March 11th, 2021. This breaks down and equates to an assessment to Chatham of $8,524,697. I've also listed the detailed budget just by the cost centers in the agenda packet. And I want to note that your counterparts in Harwich did vote their assessment as well as a positive recommendation by their finance committee. And the Chatham Finance Committee has also voted in favor of this assessment to Chatham.
Okay, great. Okay, any discussion or motion to place? Jeff?
Madam Chair, I move to place the Monomoy Regional School District Assessment Article for $8,524,697 on the warrant.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Dean?
just a quick comment in light of the lateness of the hour. I think the rest of the board will share this. The school committee and the district were able to bring the budget to a mere 0.73% increase, and I think that's remarkable, considering all the pressures and the period of time we're in. And I think it's great that the town of Harwich Select Board voted unanimously to endorse this 4-0. And I think that provides us with an opportunity. We're going to have a forum upcoming on April 15th to discuss the elementary school and our relations with the district. I think that we should all be working together, the school committee, the town of Harwich, and the town of Chatham, to try to come up with a plan to save our elementary school between now and September. Thank you. Wanted to get that comment on the record. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean. I do appreciate that comment.
Yep.
All right, let's take a vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Okay. Thank you, Alex, on that.
Recommend.
We need to
Oh,
move to recommend
yeah.
the Monomoy Regional District Assessment Article in the amount of $8,524,697.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Let's take a vote. Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Chair says aye. All right, thanks, Alex. All right, so our next is the OPEB trust appropriations article, trust fund appropriation article.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this is another annual article that you've seen in the past, and this is requesting $150,000, which will come from overlay surplus and go into the OPEB trust fund. I just want to point out in the agenda item that the reallocation of the land bank surtax that the town meeting adopted last year, and that you all saw at the beginning of this year on your first half tax bill, and again on the second half tax bill that just went out. So if you have not received a tax bill, please contact the treasurer's office. The surtax so far has collected over $275,000. So we're expecting, that amount again for the second half. So this goes a long way to help funding our liability.
Certainly does. That's a hefty amount. It certainly is. Jeff?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we projected 550, so 275 a couple times is right on the money, 550. Right. So that's just great. I move to place the article on the OPEB trust appropriation for $150,000 on the warrant.
Second.
Second.
Okay. No further discussion. We'll take a vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Vote to recommend. Motion to recommend.
I move to recommend the OPEB trust appropriation article.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All right. Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Okay, great. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
All right. I think that does it for the business agenda. We're going to move into executive session with a motion. There is no plan to return. This will end our evening. So before we do that, I just want to thank everybody for being on the call today, being at the meeting. It's been almost a 3-hour meeting, but we got a lot accomplished moving forward. So motion to move into executive session.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the select board move into executive session under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, number 21, paragraph 3, section 21, number 3, to discuss strategy relative to collective bargaining, parenthesis, collective bargaining strategy session for town union negotiations. And the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body with no return to open session.
Great. Second on that?
Second.
Okay, let's take a vote. Dean?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. All right. Good night, Chatham. We'll see you next week. All right.
Good night, all.
Good night. We'll go into the other room.